For decades, the official narrative surrounding the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki has been clear. They were a necessary evil, a grim but vital step to end World War II, save countless American lives from a projected invasion of Japan, and ultimately bring peace. This account has been enshrined in history books and public memory, shaping our understanding of the nuclear age's terrifying dawn. It's a powerful story of sacrifice and strategic imperative, presenting the bombs as the unavoidable conclusion to a brutal global conflict. But what if this widely accepted truth is only part of the story, obscuring a more complex and unsettling reality? By the summer of 1945, Japan was on its knees. Its navy was decimated, its air force largely destroyed, and its cities ravaged by conventional firebombing campaigns. American submarine blockades had cut off crucial supplies, crippling its industry and starving its populace. According to historian Gar Alperovitz, author of Atomic Diplomacy, Hiroshima and Potsdam, Japan's leadership knew defeat was inevitable and had begun exploring avenues for surrender. This wasn't a nation poised for a protracted, bloody defense of its home islands, but one desperately seeking an end to the war on honorable terms. Evidence suggests Japan had been sending out peace feelers through neutral countries like Switzerland and Sweden for months. Declassified cables from intercepted Japanese communications, known as magic intercepts, reveal a clear desire to end the war. Historian Barton Bernstein notes that Japan's primary condition for surrender was the retention of its emperor, Hirohito, a figure central to their national identity and spiritual belief. While the Potsdam Declaration, issued by the Allies in July 1945, demanded unconditional surrender, some American officials recognized the potential for negotiation around the emperor's status. A critical turning point often downplayed is the Soviet Union's entry into the Pacific War. At the Yalta Conference in February 1945, Stalin had pledged to declare war on Japan within 3 months of Germany's defeat. On August 8, 1945, just 2 days after Hiroshima and 1 day before Nagasaki, the Soviets invaded Manchuria. This was a devastating blow to Japan, not only militarily but psychologically. Many historians, including Tsuyoshi Hasegawa in Racing the Enemy, argue that Soviet entry, rather than the atomic bombs, was the decisive factor that compelled Japan's surrender, as it eliminated any hope of Soviet mediation. Intriguingly, several high-ranking American military figures expressed strong reservations about the necessity of the atomic bombings. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, stated in his memoirs that he believed Japan was already defeated and that dropping the bomb was completely unnecessary. Similarly, Fleet Admiral William Leahy, President Truman's chief of staff, wrote that the Japanese were already licked and ready to surrender. These were not fringe opinions but assessments from individuals at the very pinnacle of military strategy, directly contradicting the official rationale for the bombings. This brings us to the core of our investigation, the alternative, yet compelling, motive behind the bombings. Many historians now argue that the atomic bombs were not primarily aimed at Japan, but at the burgeoning Soviet Union. The Cold War was already casting its long shadow, even before the last shots of World War II had been fired. According to historian J. Samuel Walker, the bomb's deployment served a dual purpose: to end the war quickly, yes, but also to demonstrate American military supremacy to the Soviets, shaping the post-war world order to Washington's advantage. It was, in essence, a strategic move in a new kind of global chess game. President Truman's demeanor changed noticeably at the Potsdam Conference in July 1945, after receiving news of the successful Trinity test, the first detonation of an atomic bomb. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill observed that Truman was an entirely new man, more assertive in his dealings with Stalin. Churchill later remarked that the atomic bomb gave the U.S. a MasterCard in post-war negotiations. This shift in confidence suggests that the bomb was already being viewed through a geopolitical lens, as a tool for diplomatic leverage rather than solely a weapon of war against Japan. Secretary of War Henry Stimson, a key advisor to President Truman, openly considered the atomic bomb's political implications. His diaries reveal a keen awareness of the bomb's potential as a MasterCard in diplomacy with the Soviet Union. According to historian Martin Sherwin in A World Destroyed, Stimson believed that without the bomb, American diplomacy would be on a far weaker footing in the face of Soviet expansionism. The bomb was thus seen as a means to achieve broader geopolitical objectives, rather than solely a tactical weapon to shorten the war against Japan. The development of the atomic bomb, known as the Manhattan Project, was an undertaking of unprecedented scale and cost. By 1945, it had consumed approximately $2 billion, an astronomical sum at the time. This massive investment created immense pressure to demonstrate its utility and justify its existence. While the primary justification was war termination, some scholars argue that the sheer cost implicitly pushed for its battlefield deployment, ensuring its impact was seen and felt globally, thereby validating the monumental expenditure and asserting American technological dominance. The decision to use the bomb was also influenced by a perceived race against time, not just to end the war, but specifically to do so before the Soviets could solidify their influence in Asia. Historians like Greg Hirkan suggest that American officials feared Soviet entry into the Pacific War would lead to Soviet territorial gains and political influence in Manchuria, Korea, and potentially even parts of Japan. Dropping the atomic bomb quickly offered a way to force Japan's surrender, thus limiting Soviet involvement and preempting their territorial ambitions in the region, establishing a new power dynamic. Further supporting the Cold War thesis is the persistent argument that Japan was already on the verge of surrender. Brigadier General Bonner Fellers, a military intelligence officer on General MacArthur's staff, conducted a post-war analysis concluding that Japan would have surrendered in August 1945, even without the atomic bombs and Soviet entry, had the U.S. modified its unconditional surrender terms to guarantee the emperor's safety. This suggests that the unconditional surrender stance was maintained partly to avoid appearing too lenient, or perhaps, to ensure the full impact of the atomic weapon could be demonstrated. The timing of the bombings cannot be entirely separated from the geopolitical shifts occurring in Europe. As the war ended, the Iron Curtain was already beginning to descend across the continent. Soviet forces occupied Eastern Europe, and communist governments were being installed. The U.S. saw this as a direct challenge to democratic ideals and a threat to its own vision of a post-war world. The atomic bombs were, for some, a potent symbol of American strength, intended to deter further Soviet expansionism and enforce a Pax Americana. Beyond military strategy, the atomic bombs represented a new dimension of psychological warfare. The sheer destructive power, witnessed at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, was meant to instill awe and fear, not only in Japan but across the globe. This demonstration of ultimate power was intended to influence political calculations for decades to come, especially those of the Soviet leadership. It was a terrifying, yet undeniably effective, way to establish a new hierarchy of power in a post-war world reeling from conflict, setting the stage for decades of nuclear deterrence. Acknowledging these potential hidden motives doesn't diminish the suffering caused by the bombs, nor does it simplify the ethical dilemmas faced by decision-makers. However, it compels us to confront a more challenging historical truth. If Japan was indeed on the verge of surrender, and the bombings served a primarily geopolitical purpose related to the nascent Cold War, then the traditional moral justifications for their use become far more complex and contested. This perspective forces a re-evaluation of one of the 20th century's most defining events. Over the decades, historical consensus has slowly but surely shifted. While the Save Lives narrative remains prominent in public discourse, a significant body of academic work now supports the Cold War motive hypothesis. The release of declassified documents, personal memoirs, and intercepted communications has provided historians with new tools to re-examine the period. This ongoing re-evaluation highlights that historical events are rarely monocausal, they are shaped by a confluence of factors, both stated and unstated, military and political. Our understanding continues to evolve. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ushered in the nuclear age, forever changing the nature of warfare and international relations. Whether viewed as a necessary evil to end a brutal war or as a chilling opening salvo in the Cold War, their impact is undeniable. Understanding the full spectrum of motivations behind this decision, including the powerful geopolitical considerations, is crucial for a comprehensive grasp of 20th century history. It reminds us that even in moments of extreme crisis, power dynamics and future rivalries can play a profound, often hidden, role.